The Descent Part 2 is a very thrilling follow-up to the phenomenal horror film, but the ending raises many questions. 2009's The Descent 2 focuses on claustrophobic horror, following on from the events of The Descent, which saw a team of female friends on a spelunking expedition that turns into a fight for survival after a species of subterranean monsters called crawlers are discovered in the caves. The group end up fighting for their lives while fighting with each other. While the premise is straightforward, The Descent 2's ending is much more ambiguous than its predecessor. Director John Harris's sequel to The Descent sends a rattled Sarah, Shauna MacDonald, who returns after surviving the events of The Descent, and a rescue team descend back into the caves to find out if any of her friends are still alive. It's not long until Sarah's repressed memories rush back, as do the deadly crawlers. The Descent Part 2 makes clever use of space and uses this claustrophobic environment in new ways. However, The Descent 2's ending throws a lot in the air, and much like when in a subterranean labyrinth, it can be easy to get lost. What happens at the end of The Descent 2? Sarah kills the crawler leader, but it does little good. Sarah holding onto the ledge in The Descent 2. The Descent 2's ending isn't a happy one. Now that Detective Vaince and Kath are both crawler food, Rios, Kristen Cummings, Juno, Natalie Mendoza, and Sarah, Shauna MacDonald, try their hardest to find an exit. Unfortunately, the exit is blocked by a horde of crawlers and their assumed leader, who is the biggest out of the bunch. Greg is slowly dying nearby after sacrificing himself for Kath, Anna Skellen, and he spots the 3 remaining survivors. While Sarah, Juno, and Rios attempt to sneak around him, he grabs onto Juno's leg in a last-ditch effort to save himself. Juno lets out a scream, attracting the crawlers to the group immediately. The team manage to fight off the crawlers, but at this point, Greg, Josh Dallas of Thor fame, is completely gone and Juno is facing off with the leader alone. Sarah tries and fails to save her, and Juno is fatally slashed in the stomach by the leader. Sarah is able to kill the leader at the end of The Descent 2, and then attracts the rest of the crawlers to her so Rios can escape. Rios does manage to leave the cave, but she's thrown back in by Ed and wakes up with a crawler standing over her. What happens to Sarah in The Descent 2's ending? Sarah was more than likely killed at the end of The Descent 2. A collage image of Sarah and the crawler leader in The Descent 2. The Descent 2's Sarah overcomes so much to survive in Neil Marshall's original Descent, so it's especially tragic to see her get so close to death in this sequel. Sarah is the most experienced against the crawler threat, but she also has a strong sense of honor and family, which eventually gets the better of her here. Unlike in The Descent's ending after Juno's death, Sarah makes a noble gesture by attracting the crawler's attention for long enough to secure safety for Rios. It's certainly implied that Sarah, as well as Rios for that matter, don't survive this adventure. However, Sarah's death isn't explicitly shown. This somewhat open conclusion was likely done intentionally with the hopes of making a third installment of The Descent a possibility. The Descent 2's Sarah is a real warrior, but since The Descent 3 hasn't happened, it's mostly likely that she died. Sarah's rescue team ultimately fails. It's unlikely any of the team survived in The Descent 2. Before The Descent 2's ending, the rescue mission to find Sarah's friends turned sour very quickly, and Dan and Kath, 2 of the trained spelunkers who have been assembled for the mission, are the first to meet their ends by the crawlers. Sheriff Vaince, who believes that Sarah killed her friends in the first place, is handcuffed to Sarah to ensure she won't abandon him. After he becomes literal baggage, his hand gets cut off so that he and some crawlers will fall to their deaths, but Sarah can survive. Sarah, Juno, and Rios reach the exit of these caves in The Descent 2's ending, but it's blocked off by a group of crawlers. Their cover gets blown after Juno screams in fear when a dying Greg grabs at her in an effort to save himself. Greg is taken out by the crawlers, and the rest of the team are left to fight off the monsters. Unfortunately, Sarah is unable to save Juno, who ends up being fatally sliced open by the main crawler. Sarah tries to draw the rest of the crawlers' attention to herself so at least Rios can escape. Sadly, in the final moments of the horror movie, Ed Oswald, the mineshaft's operator, catches Rios and throws her back into the mine. While Rios' execution doesn't explicitly happen, the first thing that she witnesses after she regains consciousness is an angry crawler. The Descent 2's ending shows that the rescue team clearly failed in their mission, and everyone is presumed dead. Ed feeding the crawlers explained. His betrayal may have been an attempt to ensure the crawlers stayed underground. Ed looking at something in The Descent 2. One of the more harrowing aspects of The Descent 2's ending is when Ed decides to throw Rios back into the caves where the crawlers live, just after she made it through all of that to get to safety. The final gut-punching twist is confusing, to say the least, but it leaves possibilities open for a sequel, which was probably the intention behind this act. Ed Oswald, Michael J. Reynolds, only appears in The Descent 2 to lead the rescue team down to the caves via a mine shaft.